And we're going to be moving into motivation and emotion, or motivation in particular today. So we spent a good bit of time on Tuesday talking about how children develop. In particular, we talked about the notion that development is both continuous in this way and it's composed of stages at the same time, and how it's fundamentally both. And we in particular talked about the three major players in the developmental research. Piaget's idea that our ability to think, our cognition, develops across time. Erik Erikson, who describes our social development, and Lawrence Kohlberg, who describes our moral development. And if you recall, we presented them like 1, 2, 3, but we can't forget that they're like that. They're so tied together that you can't really even pass certain milestones in one form of development until you pass another milestone in a different form of development. So it's really hard to have morality where you think about other human beings until you have developed theory of mind, which allows you to take the perspective of another. Right? It just doesn't even make sense. Huh? So there was our. So now, today I want to pick up a little bit on physical development. Now, just briefly, because I ain't telling you about where babies come from. All right? I'm afraid that's going to be one of the new laws, like the Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Maybe it's going to be Don't Teach Children Where Babies Come From law, right? I don't know how long is it? Because it's got to be age-appropriate education. It's reading the law. Right? So here's what's going to happen is when a girl is born, they have, inside of their ovaries, they have egg cells. As many egg cells as a girl is ever going to have, she has the day she's born. Okay? What happens is after puberty, and we'll describe briefly on that, approximately once every 28 days, one of these egg cells matures. Okay? But they've been there forever. You've got a set number of eggs, and approximately once every 28 days, occasionally more than one egg is released, right? Sometimes 2 or 3, depends, but usually one about 28 days. So what happens is the egg is going to travel down around the fallopian tube to a woman's uterus. Okay? And what's going to happen is if an egg cell travels along and it does not get fertilized, by the time it gets to the uterus, it's just going to continue on its path. And what's going to happen is a woman's going to have a period, and what the period is literally the body building up resources to help a developing infant, right? It's anyway, to help the developing infant. And so what's going to happen is that if a woman has a period, then the body's going to then start to regenerate material again to support. And so every 28 days. Now, if the egg cell, it does in fact come into contact with a sperm at some point in the fallopian tube, the fertilized egg is going to continue to travel down around the fallopian tube, and it's going to start to divide. And so I've got 2 cells here, then I've got 4, then I've got 8, then I've got 16 somewhere in here. These are 100% identical cells. These are clones. I mean, these are just absolutely, completely, these are what they call stem cells. All right, you've heard of stem cells? These cells are cells that have the ability to become anything in the world. Any part of the human body can come out of these stem cells. So as it's traveling along, it's 2 and then etc. And then somewhere around 100, well, as it's traveling, by the way, it's called a zygote. Okay? The zygote is a fertilized set of cells. Okay? And when it reaches the uterus, the wall of the uterus, if it is a fertilized zygote, then what's usually going to happen is it's going to implant on the wall of the uterus, and it's going to no longer be called a zygote, but then be called an embryo. Okay, an embryo is implanted, and you can see already what's going to start to happen here is because as it's traveling the fallopian tube and it's dividing, and at some point gets somewhere around 100, you're going to start to get differentiation. See right here? These are undifferentiated cells. They can become an ear, an eye, a heart, a liver. It can be anything. Here is a point that is, see, I am a hardcore scientist, so I don't like to use words like miracle, okay? That word does not fly well with me, but there's no other option except to say the word miracle at this point. Because it's dividing, and then some miracle happens, and somehow one cell, oh, you're going to go off and become a liver, and you're going to go become a kidney, and you're going to go become, I don't know, a toe. I don't know what you're going to become. And so scientists in laboratories are able to imitate this process. They can take undifferentiated stem cells, and I don't know what they do because it's outside my pay grade, but they can grow a liver in the laboratory. They can take your stem cell, grow a liver, it is your liver. Can you imagine that? You know, oh, I need an organ transplant. You know what happens when you get an organ transplant? Your body rejects it. It's a foreign substance. We don't want foreign substances in our body. But if it's your own liver, it's great. Your body's fine with it. Why would it have a problem? It's yours. Okay? Really cool stuff. And so even though scientists can imitate it, if you ask them what's happening, they'll go, I don't know. Oh, so a miracle happened? Yeah, a miracle happened. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. We'll just stop with a miracle happened, because I have no better answer than that. Okay? So then what's going to happen is it's going to implant here, and eventually you're going to get different organs, different bones emerging. At somewhere around 9 weeks, okay, what's going to happen, and I mean, the fetal heartbeat bill here in Texas annoys the shit out of me. Because what's going to happen is that the heartbeat doesn't really happen until 9 weeks or something. 6 weeks is not a heartbeat. That is not, at 6 weeks old, a fetus does not even have a heart yet. Okay, so I don't know how you can have a fetal heartbeat bill, which is going to drive the abortion question, when the fetus doesn't even have a heart at that point. But that's for other people to argue, because it doesn't work. So the fetus, the approximately 9 weeks, it's called a fetus. Okay? So here we can see an 8-week-old fetus. We can see certain parts of it, the eyes, the brains, etc. A 12-week-old fetus, it's still a little bit crazy right here. And if you looked at the 12-week-old fetus of a human and a 12-week-old fetus of a cat, you would not be able to tell the difference. They would be the same, okay? And what's really crazy is at some point in here, this fetus is going to have gills, like a fish does, and they're going to breathe in liquid like that crazy crap. Okay, so weird things are happening here, okay? Here we've got 16 weeks and 20 weeks. Now it turns out that 24 weeks is, in fact, 24 weeks was the age at which Roe versus Wade, the national law on abortion, was written based on 24 weeks. And the reason for that logic was that 24 weeks is the absolute minimum that a child could develop and then exist outside the womb. Okay? Now, if a baby is born at 24 weeks, you're going to have like a 95% mortality rate. I mean, the baby, it is physically possible, but if a baby is born at 24 weeks, it is probably not going to survive, and if this baby survives, we'll have a lifetime of problems, an entire lifetime of problems. So we can see what's happening is that at 24 weeks, everything in the baby exists. It's got the heart, it's got the kidney, it's got the liver, it's got the. So after this point, because the full pregnancy is somewhere around 40 weeks, so all that's happening here at this point is a finishing. They're adding a little bit of fatty tissue, adding neural connections. The nervous system is growing like crazy at this point. Then look at that, there's 36 weeks. This baby's barely able to fit in there, just some weight is added. And there is my baby. Oh, isn't she sweet? Yeah, right. They don't stay sweet like that, okay? They just don't. It's just a thing, all right? So it turns out that during pregnancy, that absolutely the baby is not, babies are fairly well protected inside of their mother's stomach while developing, but it clearly outside influences can happen, like teratogens, which from the Latin is literally monster makers. And that is substances like viruses. If a woman is pregnant and they get the flu, the baby can get the flu. Or the one, I remember when my wife was pregnant, the one that they was always being, was you can get toxoplasmosis from a cat, right? And I had a cat at the time. She never liked that cat. And you know what? One day, magically, my cat was run over by a car, and it was an inside cat, and it happened while I was at work. And she swears she didn't do it, even though she was absolutely tragically obsessed with toxoplasmosis. I'm like, you're not actually like licking the kitty litter, are you? I mean, I don't know where you're going to get toxoplasmosis from, but whatever. One of the biggest ones, though, is alcohol. If a woman is pregnant and exposed to high levels of alcohol, babies will be born with what they call fetal alcohol syndrome. And there's some very, very, very key physical features to a child that has fetal alcohol syndrome. And this child will have a lot of cognitive abnormalities. One of the biggest ones is they'll never get impulse control. You know, impulse control is pretty darn important. They teach you in kindergarten, if you've got a question, raise your hand, all right? I mean, from day one in kindergarten, it's the first thing they teach you, right? And that it just doesn't happen. And then what happens is, if you take a look, here is a brain of a child without fetal alcohol syndrome. Here's a brain of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. And you see it's almost smooth. Remember, all of those ridges and valleys were extra surface area of the cortex? This baby, this brain just has less area. It has less potential. I mean, very much less potential. And to make it even harder, a huge chunk of babies that are born with fetal alcohol syndrome end up in foster care, right? That's just what happens. So, when babies are born, they have certain abilities, right? They're not completely helpless. They're pretty helpless. Human infants are the most helpless animal of all animals when they're born. You know, so many other animals, like a deer. When a deer is born, they just get up and walk around. That's pretty awesome. You know, when baby monkeys are born, you know what they do? They've got a reflex to grab on, and they grab on the back of mama's back, and they go for a ride, right? They just go along with mom. Look at a human infant. They can't walk, they can't talk, they can't grab, they are 100% useless creatures. No other animal on the planet is born as useless as a human being is. And it's actually pretty interesting. This comes from evolution, because you know, human beings have evolved to have bigger brains, to be smarter. But you know what happens when we have bigger brains is that if a baby is born with a head too big, it will kill mom. Mom will die in childbirth because she can't have that thing come out. Okay? So what happens is human brains are really strange. When a baby's born, it's like not done cooking. Okay? The brain is just, the head is not where it's supposed to be yet. And so after birth, human beings change so much more than other animals do, right? The changes in other animals from birth to adulthood are small. The changes in a human from birth to an adulthood are huge, okay? So it's kind of a trade-off. How can you get really smart without killing your mom at the same time? That's kind of what that comes in. But we have some reflexes which help them to survive, rooting reflexes, sucking reflexes, things of this nature, to help with breastfeeding. But what's actually pretty interesting is, again, I mean, a little throwback on evolution, is that human babies, if you go like this, they go like that. Okay? They have a grasping reflex. You know what it does for a human? Nothing. Remember what it did for monkeys? Grab on the mom. So it doesn't help us at all, but it helps something in our ancestral past. It just keeps coming along. It's just genetic baggage in the game of evolution. When babies are born, they have preferences. They prefer human voices. What they'll do is they'll put a really young infant, and for example, they'll put a speaker on the left side and a speaker on the right side, and then they'll play, let's say, white noise on one speaker and human voices on the other. The babies will turn their head towards the human voices. Okay? So they prefer human voices. In particular, they prefer their mom's voice. They already are able to figure out which voice is mom's voice, even right after birth. It's pretty cool. They prefer to spend time looking at this, which presumably is sort of like a face, and they don't like looking at this. Okay, so that's kind of, even at 53 minutes old. You know what? Even within the first week, they've done ones where they had babies making choices about, should I look at somebody that has clear skin or somebody that has bad complexion? Babies don't want to look at people with bad complexion. It's just from birth. It's just, that's crazy, man. Yep, that is weird stuff. Oh yeah, and they even prefer the smell. You know what they'll do is they'll have breast pads. Breast pads are, gentlemen, you ever have children in your lives, you'll know what breast pads are. But they'll prefer their own, they'll put a breast pad on the left, a breast pad on the right, and then the baby will, turn towards the one that comes from their own mother. So there's definitely some advantages to that. Blah, blah, blah. Maturation. Yeah. Anyway, maturation is basically the changes that occur during development that are just literally because of the passage of time. As a baby gets older, they mature, right? Yeah. So you get the same sequence. That is, first babies are able to lift their head. Then they're able to roll over. Then they're able to sit up. Then they're able to stand up. It doesn't go in any other order. And it turns out when we say maturation, it's like, it turns out in some parts of the world, they really, really work hard to work with the baby, exercise the baby, let's get this thing worked out. Some parts of the world, babies are basically strapped on the mom's back all day long because she's working in a field. They never have any exposure or experiences with, and yet, despite that, they walk at the same age. Right? They learn to walk because things such as ability to walk, it's just got nothing to do with experience. It just is, right? It just matures and happens. We find the baby's brain, and in the womb, the number of neurons, look at that, 750,000 per minute at some point, okay? And so it's not just the number of neurons, but now the connections. And so what's going to happen is that when a baby's born, they have, I don't have it here. When babies are born, what they've got is here is, look at that, I'll even take last time's image. You've got, here is age, birth, you've got 2. So the number of neurons in a baby's brain peaks at about age 2, all right? There is no more than that, and look at that. You have less neurons in your brain than a 2-year-old baby does, okay? All right. But what happens is it's not the number of neurons that's important, it's the connections between neurons, right? It's table is associated with chair. That's an important connection. Got it? You understand how objects work together. And so you find the same thing, though, is that the number of connections between neurons does a very similar pattern. But wait a minute. What? But you just said connections between neurons make you smart. So 2-year-old is smarter than you. No, because you know what a 2-year-old has? A ton of neural connections, and in fact it's this notion of use it or lose it. They have a ton of neural connections that disappear because they're not important. Okay? So ones that don't get used get dropped. And so now what we have is a lot of neural connections, but only the efficient ones, the ones that are useful to us. Okay? That's good stuff. Okay? But anyway, as I'm going through here, the human brain is not done cooking until about 21 years old. Right? Y'all, some of you are over 21, but most of you are sitting in your with uncooked brains. Okay? And you know the last part of the brain that fully developed is this one right here, the frontal lobes. And the frontal lobes, you know, they do a lot of good things for us, but the biggest one is impulse control. That whole put the brakes on, stop. You ever wonder why teenagers tend to do stupid things? The brains ain't done, all right? So maybe we ought to have a new law that says nobody drives until 21 years old. Right? I mean,
yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I need my kid to drive. Trust me, I am done being a chauffeur, but still, all right, there's something to it. Okay? Yeah. All babies go through this strange anxiety. When babies are very young, they just don't care who's holding them. They don't care. You can pass the babies around the room, everybody's going to have a chance to hold a baby. But somewhere around 9 to 13 months, it's inevitable this strange anxiety is going to exhibit. So the evolutionary psychologists argue that this 9 to 13 months is going to be at the same time that a baby is starting to be able to move itself through crawling or walking. Okay? Up until 9 to 13 months, this baby would never, ever, ever have a chance to get lost or something like that, to go someplace on its own. Okay? Then, a very important part of infancy is this notion of attachment. This idea that you will have an emotional connection to another. I mean, clearly, stranger anxiety is a function of attachment, right? That a baby will attach to their mother and therefore have anxiety to others. Okay? So what happened was when people first started to study attachment, there was this belief that attachment resulted from the fact that, of course you attach to mom because mom feeds you. Mom gives you your reinforcements, right? Well, Harry Harlow said, no. So he does this study with these monkeys, baby monkeys, and gives them 2 mothers. Okay? One mother, all food comes from this mother. So this mother provides the reinforcement in that sense. This mother does nothing, but she's soft. She's like a towel. Guess which monkey this, in fact, what happens in one of his studies, it's cruel and it's evil, but it's interesting. Because they have this little baby monkey in a cage, and the baby monkey just playing along, and then Harry Harlow in the video, he's got this robotic toy. Okay? This robotic toy is like, rah, his arms go up and down, and his lights are going on, right? So he takes this really scary toy, and he, boom, here you go, monkey, right? This monkey will absolutely fly across the room and grab onto this mother. It's very clear which one. This monkey will always go to this mother right here. You see, even here, he's going to stay with this mother, even he has to eat, right? But clearly you can see what's going on. This is where attachment comes from, is comfort, not from reinforcement. Okay? I like that. There's been a lot of studies on forms of attachment. That is, not all attachment looks the same. And so what you find is that researchers have defined multiple styles of attachment. It's interesting, the attachment research, but I don't like it, because the research says that if a child is securely attached, then that child is set up to be the healthiest psychological start that this kid can make. And so it's approached this way. And the majority of attachment in America, infant-mother relationships, show secure attachment. Once you leave the United States, all of a sudden, the attachment styles of infants is not here. This is not how the rest of the world works. And yet, in the Western literature, it's like, oh, if you want to have a psychologically healthy baby, this is what you want to have. This leads to bad outcomes. So the rest of the world is screwed up. So the American way is best, and everybody else is getting it wrong. So I don't know about that stuff. On the opposite end of attachment, you've got parenting. Okay? And so there's different styles of parenting. And again, there's a lot of literature showing one of these is the authoritative is supposed to be the best. It leads to the best outcomes. I would not necessarily agree with that, but authoritarian parents are the ones that set rules, and it's just like, you better blindly obey them, right? You must. Then you've got the permissive parents, which are basically trying to be their child's best friend, right? Let them get away with anything. And then finally, the authoritative, where you have rules, but you talk about them, you discuss, if you have some ideas, we'll think about them, we'll put in there, I'm going to demand things of you, but I recognize what you are at. And so it's rough as a parent, because you know how you're supposed to be a parent, and then you've got a stubborn little bastard child, right? And you're like, I would love to sit down and respect your ideas and your wishes, but eventually it's like, you know what? It's my house show, okay? Sometimes you gotta do it, sometimes you gotta be that right there. Anyway, but this one's my wife. I don't know why. I swear, she tries to buy the kids love, and I don't understand it. You don't buy their love, you treat them with respect, or whatever, different parenting styles. So, as we said, adolescence is marked by puberty, right? That's that sexual maturation, or more specifically, that time that you are able to physically create a baby. Okay? We find that at puberty, there's going to be changes in the body based on primary and secondary sex characteristics. So primary sex characteristics are those that are actually associated with reproduction, right, including menstrual cycle in females, the production of sperm in males. But then secondary sexual characteristics such as the male voice getting deeper, right, your voice gets deeper. So remember that age when you're like, "That's me." Everybody have I had at least one. I know those, okay? So it's happening at the same time here, but it's not associated with the actual act of ability to reproduce. Okay? So as we said, yeah, boys that mature early become popular, confident. You know who my class president was in middle school? The dude that could grow a beard. I don't know what the hell was going on. It was like Thanksgiving break, and he comes back from a 4-day weekend, and the dude's just, what? Oh, yeah, this is my hunting beard. You're 12! How the hell do you have a hunting beard? Holy crap. Okay? Girls that mature early, as we said, often start to associate with older girls. They're often treated as though they're older. And so you have perhaps a girl that should be playing with Barbies, but she's not. She's then being treated as though she is an object of desire. Okay? Oh yeah, there you go. There was the whole frontal lobe thing. You see what's going on here? Here is how much we go for sensation seeking, go do crazy, stupid stuff. It peaks and comes down. Ability to control impulses goes up. You see why I'm thinking 21 might be a pretty good age to say for driver's license? Because driving should not involve sensation seeking, right? Driving involves getting from point A to point B safely. At least that's how I call about it. We find at this point that children's relationships with their peers becomes incredibly important. It will just piss you off as a parent. I have invested all this time, all this money into my child, and my child refuses to believe that I know anything in the world. And somehow magically thinks some random 14-year-old girl knows more than I do. Where is that coming from? I don't get it. But peer relationships are huge. In one study, what they did was they took some kids that actually, these are like 3 years old. They will not eat broccoli. Right? They will not touch it. I mean, you're a parent, you're like, I'll give you $1 million if you just eat that broccoli. And the kids are like, hell no. So now they find a group of kids that love broccoli. Some kids love broccoli, right? It's actually do. So they got a table full of 3-year-olds that are eating broccoli. They put this kid in that would not touch it. He looks around at the other 3-year-olds, never met these kids in his life. Hey, I could do that. He starts eating broccoli. The parents could not do anything to convince this kid to do it. But you sit at a table with kids you've never seen in your life, bam, that is weird.
I still won't eat broccoli.
Yeah, you could probably get through. I used to love broccoli, but my wife doesn't know how to cook it, all right? Not sure how you can screw that one up, but it is what it is. So, though it's true that, peers have huge influence, and I mean, this is when I went to buy the house that I live in here in Texas. I hate to admit it, but the most important consideration was school district. By far, was the most. Because here's the deal. I need to make sure my child is going to a school where the parents of the other children share similar attitudes and values as me. Okay? That was the important thing, because I know that those other kids in that school are what's going to influence my kid. So I got to make sure that that school has children whose parents are similar in my ideologies. Okay? But I suffered for that, by the way. That was the shittiest house I ever lived in. Well, I lived there for 15 years, and even after 15 years, you can't even find your own house. Okay? The only way is it's like after you turn the corner, then you start to count mailboxes, and then you're like third mailbox, second house on the left after the third mailbox. That's how I find my house after 15 years. It's exactly the same as every other house. It's horrible, horrible. Parents have more influence on other aspects, however. So here's a very interesting idea, this thing called adolescence. Adolescence, like we said in last week in Eric, or on Tuesday with Eric Erickson stuff, adolescence is the time you're going through this identity development, trying to figure out who you are, what's your adult role going to be. Okay? And so in this notion of adolescence, if you take a look at it, it is, for females anyway, the beginning is the first period. That's called menarche. First period is beginning of adolescence, and then at one metric they use is marriage at the other end. Okay? So here it is in 1890. And so from first period to marriage, 7 years. Look at this. This is an old graph. I don't even remember. 2006. Not bad. The first period is 12 and a half, 26 and a half. Okay, so it's up to 14.2. I suspect that by here, 2022, you're going to add another 8 years to this thing, all right? Because I remember this one with my daughter. thank God. I was in China one summer, and so my wife decided to take the kids to Korea. And so my daughter experiences this menarche, and it turns out that they celebrate this with cake. Now, I did not ever hear of, and I'm so glad that my brother-in-law took care of that for me, because I don't think I would have done that properly. I don't know how I would have approached that. Okay? So, yeah, look at that. When I was your age, I was an adult. I like that. That's actually not a bad image right there, okay? Not a bad image. And it is problematic. I mean, what age does somebody become an adult? When is somebody an adult? Is there an age? Is there a milestone?
Well, legally it's 18.
Well, legally, they don't mean nothing, I promise you
Maybe
that.
all 18-year-olds act like kids.
The what?
All 18-year-olds act like kids still.
Yeah, I know they do. What do you think, Mariah?
I was saying maybe it depends on the person, just like maturity level.
Oh, okay,
Some
maturity
people
level?
are like 30 and they're still childish.
30? That's too long. I need to get them out of my house. So maybe, to me, adulthood is the day they pay their own cell phone bill. That's going to be my marker, okay? If I can just get them to pay their own cell phone bill, I'm done, right? I don't know, because I'm sitting here with a kid that's supposed to graduate in August, and I strongly suspect that he's going to be back home. That's my guess. Yeah. So, what happens after adolescence? Obviously adulthood, and it's kind of a sad story, because it's sort of like, it's just sort of, it's a story of decline in a lot of ways. You find that the human body has the potential to live for about 122 years, that's an estimation, but the life expectancy is obviously different. Look at that, around the world, the life expectancy was 49, then it was 71. Okay? Here we go in more specific parts of the world, because clearly life expectancy has some relationship with wealth and income as well here. And the Japanese have the longest average lifestyle, longest length of life. So even though the average has gone from 49 to 71, it's not like human beings are living 20 years longer. This is really the result of much lower infant mortality rates. Okay? If a baby dies, they're 1 year old, and I mean that really skews the averages. So though it is partly we're getting older, it's just that far fewer babies are dying. Okay? But you know what's interesting? I'd be curious about this 122 years, because there was this one study. This was awesome. Okay? They had this species of worms, and these worms have a 1 week lifespan. They are born, they reproduce, they die. It's a week. Okay? But they're really simple. So a researcher decided to take these worms and isolate different genes on them. And they were flipping genes and changing different outcomes. And they wanted to see what would happen if they changed different stuff. And they flipped one of the genes on these worms, and all of a sudden, these worms lived 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So what they found was like the death gene. There was a gene inside of the worm that was like, now it's time to die. And they were able to flip that off, right? And it was just, or switch that off. It was just amazing. They doubled the lifespan by just changing one gene. Can you imagine that there would be a gene associated with now it's time to die? If you think about it in the world of earthworms, once you have reproduced, now what are you? All you're doing is consuming resources that your baby should be eating, right? So you're pretty much just dead weight at that point, aren't you? And so it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective there would be a gene to kill you, right? To die. So I don't know if that 122 has taken this kind of a research into account, but it seems pretty cool to me. I mean, we are not simple earthworms, but what a cool thought. Okay? I like that. So as people get older, Right, here we've got, what am I, here, normal vision. People with 20/20 vision, it peaks somewhere around 22, 25, whatever, a slow gradual decline, and then a cliff. Okay, here we've got percent correct when identifying smells, we've got a peak, slow decline, cliff. Here we've got percent correct when identifying spoken words, peak, and then sort of a drop. Okay, so this is, I would, and being in America is very controversial, but not only should we not give a driver's license until 21, but we ought to take it away at 65, right? But can you imagine living in America without a driver's license? Trying to be an adult in America without a driver's license? I don't know. Wouldn't fly very well, but that's the argument for it right in here.
And meanwhile, like half of our Congress is over 75.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? So we find that though when it comes to intelligence scores, you find verbal scores, that is, you know, the language abilities of people remain quite high. The nonverbal abilities are what's declining. Okay? So some of them are retaining just fine, some are not. No, okay, good. So it's I could never teach an adult development class, because to me it would be too depressing, right? It's just a story of collapse. So I'm sure there's more to the story than that, but it's what I know at the moment.